everywhere you went, you heard that. So I remember going to school. I remember it one morning going to school. I'm just up by the alleyway that led to the field, and somebody was playing Superstition in the house. I was walking.
I would argue that opening of that song is one of the most recognizable tracks in the history of music.
Yeah, you're spot on.
From the moment Mick and Keith met through to U2 as a high school band in Dublin, how did our biggest music legends make the leap? Passion, talent, luck, and even scandal often came together to propel these stars from obscurity to household name. The stories, the journey, the wild behind the scenes, and much more. I'm Dave Anthony, and I'm the host of From Garage to Stadiums.
Let's rewind now to what precipitated Stevie knocking on a random door in New York City and finding that new musical direction. Well, it starts in the spring of 1971. Stevie had been listening to an album by a pair of far-out performers called Tonto's Expanding Headband. He was intrigued by the sounds on that album of a new type of instrument that the performers had invented based on their use of what they called Tonto synthesizers, an evolution of the Moog synthesizer invented earlier in the 1960s. Stevie was blown away by the soundscapes on the Tonto Expanding Headband album. And so Stevie, ever the spontaneous innovator, decided to drop in unannounced to visit the recording studio in New York City, where he encountered the hippie-looking twosome who made up Tonto's Expanding Headband, a British jazz bassist and producer named Malcolm Cecil, and an American producer and sound engineer, Bob Margoloff. These two men were white and made quite a visual pairing. Malcolm Cecil sported a massive afro and trademark white overalls, and Bob Margoloff routinely wore ankle-length fur coats and hair that went down to his elbows. Their sonic experiments were equally striking. Within mere hours of meeting Cecil and Margoloff, Stevie was experimenting with the synthesizer, learning its quirks, and by the end of that random weekend, the trio had recorded 17 new songs, including the beginnings of a song called Evil, which would appear on Stevie's next album, 1972's Music of My Mind. Other tracks included on that album, Superwoman, Having You Around, and Keep On Running. This album marked the first full display of Stevie's new synthesizer work and studio independence to create his own sound.
Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margoloff, Tonto's Expanding Headband. They were synthesizer innovators.
Yeah.
Stevie hears their album.
Yeah.
And goes, my goodness, I need to figure out how to use this instrument, the Moog synthesizer.
And so he goes and spends a year with them in New York. And I read an interview, and this guy reckoned that they'd done 36 songs. Okay?
Yes.
Now then, think about albums. Albums at that time, vinyl, certainly 12-inch things.
10 or 12 tracks, maybe.
10 to 12. So they basically made in a year three and a half, 4 albums.
Wow.
Right? I mean, it's just staggering. If that is true, that's staggering. And it shows how Stevie's instincts were spot on to make that move. I mean, we spoke about Bowie, didn't we? So I suppose Bowie going off to do Low and Berlin is a similar journey, but it's quite something. And for him to be coming from that R&B world, you see, that's the thing about Stevie. He transcends all genres.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paulo.
Yeah, he just transcends all genres because, like you say, he heard the album, the Tonto Expanding Headband album, and he went, that's where I need to go.
Which, historically R&B and soul, I mean, to introduce electronic kind of sounds, that's pretty innovative.
And also the thing is as well that, you know this yourself, but those two worlds were miles apart, miles and miles apart. There was a separate chart, wasn't there, for R&B records and they were just two different worlds.
Absolutely.
And Stevie made the across the bridge.
Was he one of the first artists to kind of incorporate the synthesizer into sort of mainstream?
Absolutely, and to bring it into R&B and into funk and to make it funky and to make it soulful. I mean, Yeah, there's that Creeping, the song Creeping?
Mm-hmm.
The way he plays, he makes that soulful, that synthesizer is soulful on there,
Mm-hmm.
And then on Superstition, it's funky as hell, right?
Yeah.
That Moog sound, He was just driven by his music, and it's got Happier Than the Morning Sun, Girl Blue, Keep On Running, I Love Every Little Thing About You. These are just great songs. And Superwoman.
Yep. Having You Around is a good track.
Oh, I love Having You Around is a great track.
If you played Having You Around from that Music of My Mind, and then you play Tumbling Dice by the Stones, you almost hear a similar, like that backup female chorus that goes on and on. I think Mick was listening, and then goes on, as you said, to start to really revolutionize really revolutionized the music industry. I mean, he ends up opening up for the Stones in '72 on their tour. That sent him to a new, that crossed the bridge again. You see, for Stevie, music is music. He's not bothered about categories. He's not bothered about, genres. If it's a good album, it's a good album. Right. And, if it's good music, it's good music. So he's actually, he's selling himself to, he doesn't care. He'll do anything.
Paolo referenced the prolific amount of songs created with Malcolm and Margoloff that put Stevie in a position to quickly release another album in that same year of 1972 called Talking Book, and it marked the beginning of his so-called classic period, a stretch of 4 years from 1972 to 1976, where Stevie released album after album that weren't just critically acclaimed, but revolutionary. The Talking Book album gave us Superstition, a song Stevie had written for Jeff Beck, but instead wisely kept for himself, and You Are the Sunshine of My Life.
I remember that at school, and I remember thinking, I mean, there's these kind of singles like You Are the Sunshine, and I Just Called to Say I Love You, and what's the baby one? Isn't she?
The baby one.
Yeah. He's got that thing that McCartney's got. He can write these really kind of, I don't want to use the word trite, but these kind of, very, not much substance or depth to them. Pretty songs,
Right. And I guess that's the flexibility that in his genre he's happy to go to. So
absolutely.
And what about Superstition? I mean, that song, man, that song was everywhere.
Oh man, was that the same for you, right?
Oh. That guy owned the mid-'70s. All I remember is Stevie winning awards and putting these albums out.
Yeah, exactly. And everywhere you went, you heard that. So I remember going to school. I remember it one morning going to school. I'm just up by the alleyway that led to the field, and somebody was playing Superstition in the house. I was walking.
I would argue that opening of that song is one of the most recognizable tracks in the history of music.
Yeah, you're spot on.
Both Superstition and You Are the Sunshine of My Life went straight to #1, and each song won Stevie a Grammy for Best R&B Performance, with Superstition and Pop Vocal Performance for Sunshine of My Life. Another funky track called Maybe Your Baby was about challenging romantic relationships, and a song called Big Brother mocked the words of politicians that never materialized in progress for Black people. The album was funky, romantic, and political, and the world was listening. And remember at the beginning of this story, that little boy that impressed Berry Gordy at Motown Records at age 11 with his versatility on various instruments? Well, on this Grammy-winning album, Stevie played every instrument. Next came 1973's Inner Visions. Stevie continued on with his New York synthesizer wizards, Cecil and Margoloff, at his side. The album won a Grammy for Best Album of the Year, and Cecil and Margoloff were listed as associate producers and engineers and programmers on the album. They were recognized with a Grammy Award together for Best Engineered Recording. Now Stevie was going even deeper. This record tackled social justice, drug abuse, systemic racism, and spiritual longing. Living for the City, for example, was a cinematic protest song of social commentary on the complex challenges facing the inner city.
I think you're right about the social commentary, because and he's very good at it as well. His lyrics, like Living for the City, that whole stuff about a boy, and he's trying to get a job and he can't do it and he has to steal, and he got it. He understood it in one. And a bit like Dylan with some of his, like Hurricane, the way he's able to lay out that whole song for you, that whole story.
Yeah.
In lyrical form, and Stevie does that obviously with Living for the City.
Yeah.
And becomes involved in a lot of social causes.
Correct.
In fact, he plays up in Harlem, and he plays a lot of benefits, and he's using music now as a social force.
The Higher Ground song would prove dangerously prescient, as next we'll discuss how Stevie was involved in a serious accident that threatens not only his career, but his life.